The Crawling Trespassers by Nathan Rodriguez. I never thought I'd end up living on my grandparents' farm ranch, but life has a way of throwing curveballs. After my parents kicked me out and I couldn't afford an apartment, my grandparents offered me a place to stay for cheap. The bedroom they gave me on the first floor reeked of old people and was cluttered with Grandma's religious knickknacks. A giant painting of Jesus stared at me while I slept, which was unsettling to say the least. For the first week, everything seemed normal, but then things started getting weird. I'd just gotten home from my job at the corner store one night when I heard footsteps coming from the crops. My heart started racing. Was someone trying to steal Grandpa's produce? I crept closer to investigate, careful not to step on any crunchy leaves. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was definitely someone out there. But they weren't walking. They were crawling on all fours like some kind of animal. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I watched this person sneaking around in the darkness. I wanted to confront them, but something told me that would be a bad idea. Instead, I ran back inside to wake up Grandpa. He stormed out of the house in his pajamas, rifle in hand, screaming like a madman. "If I ever catch you on my farm again, I'll blow your damn brains out," he bellowed into the night. I figured that would be enough to scare off any trespassers. But the next night, things got even stranger. I jolted awake to the sound of laughter right outside my window. My heart pounding, I sat up and saw a figure peering into my room. As soon as they noticed me, they took off. I told Grandpa again, and this time he was livid. He grabbed his rifle and stomped to the front door, with me close behind, ready to confront whoever was out there. The moment Grandpa opened the door, something lunged out of the darkness and grabbed his leg, sending him sprawling. Without thinking, I tackled the attacker, easily taking them down since they were already crouched. Grandpa scrambled to his feet and trained his gun on the guy while I called the sheriff. Suddenly, I heard Grandpa let out a blood-curdling scream. I dropped the phone, fearing the worst. When I got to the front steps, I saw Grandpa on the ground clutching his bloody nose. Someone else had come out of nowhere, shoved him down, and punched him before running off into the night. I felt sick to my stomach. Who would do that to a helpless old man? In the end, the sheriff showed up too late to catch anyone. Grandpa installed security cameras aimed at the crops the very next day. But I still lie awake at night sometimes, wondering if those creeps will come back. The sound of that eerie laughter still echoes in my mind. The Silent Caller by Trevor Williams. It was just another night hanging out with my sister and her friends. I got home late, exhausted but in good spirits. As I approached the front door, I noticed a note from Mom asking me to take out the trash. Not wanting to wake anyone, I tiptoed around to the side of the house where we keep the cans. That's when I heard it, voices coming from our backyard. My blood ran cold as I peeked over the fence. Two strangers were standing by our patio table, talking in hushed tones. Panic set in as I realized we were about to have uninvited guests. I sprinted inside to wake up Mom. Dad doesn't live with us, or I would have gotten him instead. We had barely made it out of her bedroom when we heard footsteps on the stairs. In a split-second decision, I shoved Mom towards the window, urging her to climb out onto the narrow ledge below. Somehow, I convinced her to do it just as the intruders entered the room. I caught only a glimpse of shadowy figures before I jumped out after her. We scrambled down to the grass and ran to the neighbor's house, hearts pounding. For 2 weeks, we tried to put the incident behind us. But then came that night. The phone rang at 3 a.m., piercing the silence. It kept ringing and ringing, never going to voicemail. Mom and I exchanged worried glances, both too scared to answer. After what felt like an eternity, she yanked the cord from the wall. We slept with it unplugged that night, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was connected to the break-in. The next morning, Mom got a text that made my skin crawl. "Why didn't you pick up?" That was just last week, and we're still on edge, jumping at every little noise. I can't help but wonder, when will they strike again? And what do they want from us? The Wall Watcher by Benjamin Carter. It was just another school night for 14-year-old Sarah. She'd fallen asleep without finishing her homework and woke up in a panic at 1:15 a.m. Flicking on her bedside lamp, she started scribbling away, trying to get it done. But then she heard something that made her freeze. There were faint noises coming from inside the walls. At first, she thought she was imagining things, but when she stopped writing, the sounds became clearer, like something was pushing against the inside of the wall. Sarah's eyes darted to the storage space next to her bed, with its big square door built into the wall. Suddenly, the noises got louder, as if whatever was in there started running around. Sarah screamed for her mum as the door to the storage space burst open. A figure emerged from the darkness, and Sarah's screams echoed through the house. Her parents could hear her even through 3 closed doors. Sarah's father burst into the room to find a nightmare come to life. A large, overweight man had his hand clamped over Sarah's mouth. In a matter of seconds, her dad tackled the intruder, landing a few solid punches. When the police arrived, they found 2 pairs of Sarah's underwear in the man's pocket. The family later learned he'd been living in their walls for weeks, watching Sarah through tiny holes he'd drilled. They moved out immediately, but Sarah still wakes up some nights, convinced she can hear scratching coming from inside the walls. The Beach Creatures by Charles Mitchell. My wife and I thought a romantic night at Cedar Beach sounded perfect. What we didn't realize was that the place closed at 9:30 p.m., leaving us stranded miles from anywhere. With nothing else to do, we decided to take a moonlit stroll along the water's edge. For the first half hour, we didn't see another soul. The beach was eerily empty, just the sound of waves lapping at the shore. But as we turned to head back, something caught my eye that made my skin crawl. There were more than 2 sets of footprints in the wet sand. Our tracks from earlier were mostly washed away, but there were 2 fresh sets of prints that definitely weren't there before. They led up towards the dunes, away from the water. My wife and I exchanged nervous glances. We hadn't seen anyone else out here. So where did these come from? I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight app, scanning the nearby dunes. "Hello?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is anyone there?" Silence. I told my wife to wait while I checked out a pile of garbage cans, the only place someone could be hiding. As I got closer, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There was a tunnel behind the cans, probably leading to a parking lot. I inched forward, shining my light into the darkness. What I saw next will haunt me for the rest of my life. 2 things were huddled in the tunnel. I hesitate to call them human. They were naked, with wrinkled, flaky skin the color of dirty sand. Their bodies were hunched and twisted in ways that seemed impossible. I shut off my light and ran back to my wife, dragging her with me as we sprinted to the car. We made it back, out of breath and shaking. I tried to explain what I'd seen, but I could tell my wife didn't believe me. Hell, I'm not sure I believe it myself, but I know what I saw. I reported it to the authorities, but they just brushed me off. Now, I find myself drawn back to that beach every week, searching for proof of those creatures. Am I crazy? Or is there something out there, hiding in the dunes, waiting for unsuspecting beachgoers? I'm determined to find out, even if it means facing those things again in the dark. The Midnight Janitor by Lucas. I work as a night janitor at the local high school. Most nights, I'm the only one on shift. There's not much need for more than one person to handle the night duties. My routine's pretty set. I start with the downstairs classrooms, then work my way up. The cafeteria, gym, auditorium, and nurse's office, those are for the morning and afternoon crews. Since I'm always alone, I like to have radios scattered around the hallways, blasting music to keep me company. That's exactly what I was doing on this particular night. The upstairs of our school is shaped like a U, not an O. There's only one way to get from one side to the other. I was in one of the social studies rooms mopping away when something caught my eye. All the way across on the other side of the school, Lights suddenly flicked on in one of the classrooms. Now, I'm not talking about lights left on by mistake. I always shut off the lights in every room I'm not in. No, these lights turned on just like that. I felt chills run down my spine, rooting me to the spot. Then I saw movement. Someone was walking towards the window. They stopped and stared directly at me. It was the most unsettling thing I'd ever seen. My mind raced. Should I confront them? Run? Call the police? I inched closer to my window, trying to make out details. It looked like a man, maybe in his 30s or 40s. He had dark hair, and I could see a thick beard even from this distance. Slowly, he raised his hand and started waving at me. My heart pounding, I yanked the blinds shut and tried to catch my breath. What were my options here? After a moment, I gathered my courage and lifted the blinds again. The light in the room across the school was off. Panic surged through me. He must be on his way over here. I didn't waste another second. Running seemed like the best option, so that's exactly what I did. I bolted down the stairs and out the back door of the school, not caring about anything except saving my own skin. Later, when they checked the security cameras, they saw the man had come up from the basement and wandered around the school. Getting a closer look at his face on the footage made my blood run cold. He was not a pleasant-looking man, to say the least. The creepiest part? The cameras showed him going back down into the basement, but he never came out again. They searched, but found no trace of him down there. It makes me wonder if there are hidden rooms or exits we don't know about. Lately, doing this job has never been more terrifying. Every shadow seems to move. Every creak of the building sets my nerves on edge. I can't shake the feeling that one night I might turn around and find that man standing right behind me, waving with that same eerie slowness. The Secret Photographer by Ethan Davis. When I was 17, I worked as a house cleaner to save up for college. My longest-standing client was a man named Jeffrey. Our interactions were minimal. I met him once when I started, and we'd exchange a few words if he came home early from work. That was it. I couldn't tell you if he seemed normal or not, but he had one very strict rule: never go into his basement. He even left a big sign on the door as a reminder. The curiosity ate away at me, but I did my best to respect his privacy. Then one day, while I was dusting in his bedroom, I got a little snoopy. I started going through his drawers. The bigger ones just held clothes, nothing interesting. But as I worked my way down to the smaller drawers, I found cameras, batteries, photo albums, and various knickknacks. The middle drawer was more of the same, but in the bottom one, tucked perfectly in the corner, sat a small wooden box. It needed a key to open, but I remembered seeing a small key hanging on his keyring in the kitchen. It looked like it might fit. My heart racing, I retrieved the key and tried it. Sure enough, it twisted in the lock, and the box opened with a soft click. What I found inside made my blood run cold. There was a stack of black and white photos. The first few were just pictures of the house. But then, I was in every single one, every room, including the bathroom. My skin crawled as I flipped through them, realizing how long I'd been watched without knowing. The most disturbing picture was a colored one that stood out from the rest. It was taken from outside one of the windows, showing me in the kitchen. The angle made it clear someone had been standing right outside, mere feet away from me. I carefully put most of the pictures back, but kept a few as potential evidence. My hands shaking, I locked the box and returned it to the drawer, making sure everything looked undisturbed. I was about to leave and never come back when I passed the basement door. Since I wasn't planning to return anyway, I figured I might as well satisfy my curiosity about what was down there. I pushed the door open and flicked on the lights. The smell hit me immediately, a rotten animal stench that made me gag. Weird posters covered the walls, many of them erotic. To my horror, I realized some featured boys and girls who looked underage. There were 2 doors leading to either rooms or closets. I didn't dare open them, but the horrible smell was strongest near those doors. Suddenly I became aware of a faint buzzing sound that seemed to follow my movements. I looked up and spotted a camera in the corner, its lens pointed directly at me. As soon as I noticed it, the camera froze, no longer tracking me. That was all I needed to see. I ran out of that house as fast as my legs could carry me. Jeffrey tried calling me once after that. I didn't pick up and he didn't leave a message. I'm so grateful I never gave him my address. Even now, years later, I sometimes wake up in a cold sweat, wondering if he's out there somewhere still taking pictures of unsuspecting people, and I can't help but think about what or who might have been behind those 2 doors in the basement. The Parking Lot Predators by Ryan Patterson. I was getting off the midnight shift at Stop and Shop with my co-worker, heading to our cars in the empty parking lot. A black pickup truck pulled up next to us, engine rumbling in the quiet night. There was a couple inside. They looked like they'd stepped right out of a backwoods horror movie. The guy had a scraggly mustache and beard, a dirty cap pulled low, with a cigarette dangling from his mouth. The woman's hair was a greasy tangle, her face smudged with what I hoped was just dirt. They stopped right in front of us, blocking our path. The guy leaned out the window, his breath reeking of stale smoke. "You boys got any spare change for gas?" he drawled. My co-worker dug through his pockets and dropped 2 quarters into the man's outstretched hand. I fished out $1, hoping that would be enough to make them leave. The guy looked at the money, then back at us, his eyes narrowing. "I'm gonna need more than that," he said, his tone suddenly menacing. We apologized, explaining it was all we had. "Bullshit!" he spat. I could feel my co-worker tensing beside me, his nervousness matching my own. The woman in the passenger seat was grinning now, a predatory smile that made my skin crawl. Without a word, we both started edging towards our cars. I heard the pickup's engine rev as the man spun it around. Heart pounding, I jumped into my car, jammed the key in the ignition, and peeled out of the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I saw the truck's headlights following me. I weaved through side streets, trying to lose them, and finally pulled into a well-lit gas station. Hands shaking, I texted my co-worker to make sure he was okay. He replied that he was fine, and I felt a moment of relief. That relief was short-lived. A pair of headlights swept into the gas station. It was the pickup truck. I scrambled back into my car as they tried to block me in. Through the windshield, I saw the woman lowering her window, something glinting in her hand. With a sickening jolt, I realized it was a gun. I slammed the car into reverse, tires squealing as I shot backwards out of the parking lot. A deafening crack split the air, and my back window shattered. Adrenaline surging, I somehow managed to lose them again and make it home. As I stumbled out of the car, legs weak with relief, I noticed 2 more bullet holes in the body of my vehicle. The reality of how close I'd come to dying hit me like a punch to the gut. And for what? A few dollars. It's terrifying to think about how many twisted people are out there looking for easy targets. Now every time I leave work late at night, I'm on high alert. I check my surroundings constantly, never lingering in the parking lot. But I can't shake the fear that one day I might look up and see that black pickup truck pulling in beside me again. The Asylum Shadow by Andrew Sullivan. Me and Andrew, my half-sister's cousin, were 18 years old at the time. We decided to go exploring in the abandoned asylum in our town. It was way past dark. There were no cars on the road, so it was probably after midnight. Andrew drove. We both brought our video cameras in hopes to catch some interesting footage. YouTube was only 2 or 3 years old at the time, and exploring abandoned places was a pretty big thing for YouTube videos back then, so we thought it would be cool. We had to crawl under a hole in the fence that someone else had cut. We both brought along flashlights, of course. We got in through one of the broken windows. There were a few planks on the floor by the window that had once been planked up against the window to prevent anyone from entering. We began our search, both flashlights on, along with Andrew's camera, which had night vision capabilities. The asylum loomed before us, a hulking shadow against the starless sky. Our footsteps echoed through empty corridors, each creak of the floorboard sending shivers down my spine. There was nothing but broken glass and graffiti everywhere. There were a few cracks and holes in the wood floors that led to blackness below. We didn't dare shine our lights down there. We both shared a few nervous laughs. But I was creeped out as hell in there, and I knew he was too. The place was huge. We ended up in a small room with a dental chair and other equipment. It was strangely unsettling, the rusted metal gleaming dully in our flashlight beams. The most unsettling room upstairs, however, was the bathroom. When we were in there, we heard a constant dripping sound coming from one of the stalls. When we tried to open it, it was locked. The opening at the bottom was far too small to crawl through, so we just left that room in a hurry, very creeped out. Behind one door, we found a stairway leading upstairs or downstairs. We wanted the video to be as scary as possible, so of course, like two teenage guys would, we went downstairs. There was a new set of hallways, much more creepy now that we were underground. The air felt thick and oppressive, making it hard to breathe. There was a bulletin board on the wall with a bunch of old photos and news articles on it. Me and Andrew were checking that out when a metallic thud came from down the hall. We shined our lights over in that direction just in time to see what we were sure was a forehead moving from the hallway into one of the rooms. My heart leaped into my throat, and I could hear Andrew's breath catch. For a moment, we stood frozen, our flashlights trembling in our hands. Then Andrew started screaming as we ran back in the direction we came. Now, I would have just thought it was a homeless person or something. But as we were stomping up the stairs, a single flight below us, we could hear steps following us. At this point, I was screaming too. The feeling of being in the back was horrifying. I felt that at any moment I would be grabbed from behind and dragged down the stairs. But we made it back to the main hall and down to the window that we entered from. We made it outside and could hear through the window the door to the stairway opening from down the hall. We got to Andrew's car as fast as we could and drove off, never looking back. The entire ride home, we kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a shadowy figure chasing us. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that whatever we saw in that asylum wasn't entirely human. What if it had caught us? What was it doing down there all alone? The Hidden Room, by Gabriel Pearce. We were a young couple that had just moved into a new house. We had a bedroom on the first floor. The house had an upstairs, a middle floor, and a den, no basement. At night, we started hearing strange noises coming from below us. I checked under the bed. Nothing was there. The sound seemed to be coming from beneath the floor, but the house didn't have a basement, so it didn't make sense. We started to notice things were different in the morning, like certain doors were opened that we were sure had been shut the previous night. My wife's closet door always seemed to be open. We made sure to shut all the windows one night just to make sure it wasn't some kind of draft. The doors were all open the next morning. The unsettling feeling grew with each passing day. We'd wake up to find objects moved, as if someone had been rummaging through our belongings in the night. The air felt heavy, charged with an unseen presence. We had decided that it had gone far enough. The next night, we both stayed up, listening and waiting. The noises coming from below were louder than ever, sounds like things being pushed around, moaning. I headed down to the den and put my ear against the wall, listening for where the sound may be coming from. It was coming from inside the wall I was up against, but a little lower down, below the den. My heart raced as I realized the implications. I went back to my wife. I told her we had to stay up for as long as possible and see what happens. We stayed up until around 2 hours. My wife started to drift off, and I guess I had shortly after. I woke to my wife shaking me, silently crying to herself. She pointed at her closet, which had been opened. There was some kind of hidden door propped open in her closet. It led down into the floor. The sight of that gaping darkness made my blood run cold. I hopped out of bed and shined a light down there. It was a ladder leading far down to some hidden room. I had my wife lock the door and called the police while I took my machete with me down into the secret room. When I got to the bottom, I found a light switch. The room had a table and chair, a small cot in the corner, and a bunch of toys scattered across the room. The air was stale, thick with the scent of unwashed bodies and fear. Suddenly, a scream came from upstairs. It was my wife. Somebody was trying to break down the door. I climbed up the ladder the best I could while holding the machete, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. By the time I got up there, they had already kicked in part of the door. They stuck their head through a hole in the door and looked at me. He was a dirty-looking man. I saw craze in his red eyes. For a moment, our gazes locked, and I saw something inhuman in those bloodshot eyes. He must have seen my machete because he ran straight out the front door. I don't know what the room is for, maybe some kind of old bomb shelter or something. But I don't know who the hell that man was, how the hell he got down there, and how long he's been down there. The questions haunt me to this day. What if he comes back? What other secrets might this house be hiding? The Invisible Neighbor, by Oliver Hayes. I was 27 years old, moving out to live with my girlfriend in an apartment. It wasn't the fanciest place ever, as we weren't the wealthiest couple ever, but it was fine for us. The first night in, we already hated the neighbor. There was yelling and thumping going on all night. It was like they didn't sleep at all. My girlfriend wanted me to go over. I told her if it continued the next night, I would go over. We didn't hear anything of them throughout the day while setting up furniture. But when night came and we were trying to get some sleep, the freakish yelling and banging resumed, sometimes even bangs on the wall. The sounds seemed to seep through the walls, making our entire apartment vibrate with an unseen energy. I decided to draw the line and confront them. I knocked on the door, and a middle-aged albino woman answered the door. Her voice was raspy, as if she'd been smoking cigarettes for the past 40 years. I politely asked her to quiet down. She told me to back off and mind my own business before slamming the door in my face. The noises and yelling only got louder after this. My wife said we should report them. I went to the front desk the following day, bringing up the couple that lives in that apartment. The doorman looked puzzled. He told me that only a woman named Kathy lived there. Her husband passed away 5 years ago. She was written down as only being one person in that room, so she was breaking a rule of the apartment building. The doorman went to go check out the room. The woman let him search the apartment. He came back to tell me that she was all alone in there, which seems so odd. He did, however, ask her to keep it down. I thanked him and went back to the room. It seemed it had worked, as there weren't any sounds that night. The silence was almost eerie after days of constant noise. I woke to see somebody standing by our bed. "Anna," I whispered. My wife turned next to me. She was in the bed. The familiar, raspy voice at the end of the bed said, "We shouldn't have reported her." I screamed and fumbled for the light switch. My wife started screaming even louder. By the time I turned on the lamp, she was gone. The room felt suddenly cold, as if all the warmth had been sucked out. I slipped on my shoes and ran out into the halls in my robe, looking for her. Her apartment door was open, but she wasn't in there. Where could she have gone so fast? Nothing was heard of Kathy for a whole week before one night there were 4 loud knocks on our walls. Not thumps like the previous noises. These were actual knocks meant to get our attention. We moved out a day later. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that there was more to Kathy than met the eye. Was she truly alone in that apartment? Or was there something, or someone, invisible to everyone but her? The memory of that raspy voice in our bedroom still sends chills down my spine. What if she's still out there, waiting for new neighbors to torment?